Okay, so I want my cat back. It has an Uzi and it's got a sawn off, but it needs that other staple of gangsters and child soldiers, the Kalashnikov AK47. Obviously, the best choice is an airsoft gun, but they're way too expensive. I'm not about to drop £400 on something. It's just going to be a gun that I'm going to film for half a day. So I'm going to try and do this on a budget, and I opted for the next best option, the Poison Wolf. The gun itself was a bit small, but I figured it wouldn't matter too much once it's actually in the game and whatnot. Half my assets are weird scales anyway, so who cares? The main challenge was the gun came as one solid piece and I needed the magazine to be detachable so I could do sick reload animations. I figured the easiest way to do this would be to hack off the magazine and then add some metal to the bottom of the gun and some magnets to the top of the magazine, and then I'd just be able to stick it and unstick it whenever I needed. So first things first, take the gun apart. Once the gun was apart, I cut up some wood to glue inside and then attached a piece of metal to it. I spent far too long trying to figure out how to fix the magnets into the magazine in some clever way, and in the end I just went with the easy but stupid option of using a metric ton of hot glue. There was a bunch of random crap inside the magazine that I had to hack out to make space, but in the end 2 magnets fitted perfectly. Then, while we wait for that to dry, I'll paint a grenade for a later video. I also realised there were 2 holes in the side of the gun that I'd totally forgotten about, so I covered those with some thin bits of plastic and figured that once it's spray painted, you're not going to notice what they are anyway. Then I got all excited and tried the magazine too early, and one of the magnets got pulled out because the glue hadn't set properly.
Mistakes were made, that was not dry.
So instead of waiting for that to dry for longer, I just added a bunch more hot glue, covered that in super glue, and then sprinkled on a little bit of baking soda for good measure.
Oh, the fumes are really bad. Fuck, you know.
With all that secured, I gave it the old make some gun noises and jiggle it about test, and it all seemed pretty good. Now, a lot of craft videos and even spray paint manufacturers are going to tell you that you can't spray paint at -4 degrees, but they're cowards. It worked fine, the gun is black, I went to bed. Next, with everything fully dry, I brushed over the whole gun with some silver to make it look more weathered and make it look a bit more metallic, and then I added a little bit of brown, brushed onto certain bits to make it look kind of rusted. Hardly any of that is going to be visible on the final pixelated results, but I'll know it's there and hopefully it makes a little bit of difference to how realistic it looks. Then is filming time. My filming rig for this stuff is super basic. It's just my phone on a big stick set to wide angle and pointing at a white wall. First, I kind of test out all the motions that I'm going to need to do, probably make some cute little gun noises. I could go straight into just filming it, but the super long witch nails on your hands make everything harder, so it's good to do a little practice first. Then it's on with the witch gloves and running through all the different animations. I've gotten into the habit of trying to do 3 or 4 takes of every motion just to save me having to come back and reshoot stuff that I don't like in the first take. Sometimes it's hard to know at this point what's going to look good, so I just do a bunch of different takes of everything and figure it all out later. Also try and keep my movements really slow and smooth to prevent blurring on the video and make it easier to extract nice, clean-edged frames later. With everything filmed, I go through the video and pick the best frames to use as my keyframes for my animation. I realise I could import the whole video into Photoshop and then have all the frames imported into layers, but I like being able to play back and forth through the video to just find the frames that work. Also, I'm old and I've done it this way since before Photoshop could handle importing the whole video into layers, and I'm not about to change my ways now. Then once that's done, we lay everything out in a nice sprite sheet, and with that it's on to the painstaking process of cutting everything out. Photoshop's object detection tool does a pretty decent job of finding my hands and the AK most of the time, but every now and again it kind of craps out. Even when it gets it right, I still need to manually go back through and tidy up for things like the fingernails, gaps in my fingers, whatever. It's a headphones on, zone out kind of job, but secretly I really like it. 40,000 years later, with all the frames cut out, we add some muzzle flashes and glow on the frames where the player shoots. These are kind of tricky to get right. I might at some point go back and remove them and generate my muzzle flashes separately, but for now I kind of like this effect. And there's a few more small steps before export. I go through and remove the seam lines from the witchy gloves to make them like a little bit more like skin, because no self-respecting witch has seam lines on her hands after all. And the final touch is remembering there are 3 frames where those magnets are visible, so I went in and added a bullet over those magnets in the frames where you can see the magazine's top. I definitely didn't just type AK47 bullet into Google and screen grab the first result to do this. With all of that done, I get the individual frames exported and copied into my projects folder and set up the basics of the weapon in Engine. Then once it's all loadable and collectible in Engine, I write a custom state machine for it. This one that I'm using is based on the pre-existing FSM I've already got for the Uzi, which lets the gun bounce around between multiple shots. Obviously at this point there's a bunch of back and forth between scripting and playing to get the feel and the timing all nice and punchy, but that's not super interesting to watch. In a later pass I'm going to come back when all the guns are done, and I'll do a proper sound design pass on things like the reload sounds and the draw sounds and so on, but for now just a shooting sound will do. Hope you've enjoyed watching this process video. Next one I'll be covering the process of getting in an enemy that uses this weapon as well. Until then, have a nice life.